Welcome, everybody, to our webinar today. Why should I use a broker to sell my dental practice? Or we could have called it, why should I not use a broker to sell my practice? Either way, we're going to look at some of the more interesting facts, theories, opinions that might help some of you decide, which way to lean. I want to welcome everybody from California. You get the prize for coming the farthest, and we are very flattered that you would make this trip today. Thanks for being here. We're in the Southeast right now, and it's a very raw, blustery, cold day. My wife said, Earl, we need to move to Florida. I said, honey, we are in Florida, so I don't know what to do from here. But let's have some fun with our webinar today. Let's make it interactive. Let's make sure nobody leaves with any questions that are unanswered. Maybe the first way of kicking off this discussion would be to tell you a true story. I'm always suspicious about somebody that says, Earl, I'm going to be honest with you, as if he had a choice. But anyway, this is a true story. I'm not making this up. But 37 years ago, and I had been doing transitions for a couple years at that time, I got a call from a dentist in Chattanooga. He had been trying to sell his dental practice for 2 years so he could move to Florida, Ponte Vedra, Florida, an up-and-coming little place, which is now home to multimillionaires building huge estates on the coast. But he hadn't been able to sell his practice, so he was still stuck in Chattanooga. He did decide, though, to list his practice with me. And that was back in the time when the business was more personal, more time intensive. I went to Chattanooga and I met with him. I returned to Chattanooga with the facts and figures of what a practice merger would do for a buyer. And I just went door to door calling on dentists saying, would you be interested in taking an extra $100,000 home a year? Several people listened to me. 2 weeks later, I received 2 full price offers for his practice. And a week after that, the closing occurred where he got paid 100% cash in full for his practice. So that might help explain a little bit why some people might want to consider using a broker to do what was undoable. But why would I pay somebody to do something I can do myself and probably do it better? There's big money involved with this. I saw that car you drove up in. I know they don't grow on trees, so why don't I just go find a buyer and save all that money? I could really use a nice new boat, and that fee would just about cover it. The other reason I don't want to hire a broker is brokers aren't going to understand me and my practice and how my practice and I are so special and not like any other practice or dentist in the whole cosmos. They just don't get it. They don't get how my practice is worth a lot more money than any other practice in the world. This is my practice. And they don't get it. And I can sell this practice better than anybody. I can prove to buyers how special this practice is, and they can just get rich as all get out if they just buy it. I can tell them that. So I don't need a broker to do those things, not at all. Well, are there some downsides to trying to sell the practice myself? Yeah, I think I've heard a lot of them over the years. Let me count the ways. I could have a very limited audience of prospects. Where am I going to advertise my practice? I don't have the widest exposure. I don't have the network. I don't have the SEO. I don't have the websites. I don't have the forums. I don't have the database. So one of the downsides is I might only reach 1 in 10 of prospective buyers. And maybe the best buyer in the world is one of those 9 that I couldn't reach. Excuse me, I got a cold skiing in France last week, and it is hard to get rid of. So I apologize for that. But I've also noticed when a buyer and a seller have met each other and the seller says, Earl, I just want you to put the sale together. I already have the buyer. That these buyers are, without exception, the most difficult people to work with, the longest, most involved sales. And if I had found a new buyer de novo, it would have gone through 1/10 the effort. So a lot of times when the seller does find their buyer, they don't realize it until it's done, maybe not then. This was a very difficult deal. Another reason, downside for selling it yourself is you probably don't know all of the tax nuances, tax laws, tax case law, tax appeals cases, to know how to structure a sale in the most advantageous yet legal way. And I'm sure you all know the difference between uh, tax avoidance and tax evasion. Uh, Tax avoidance is when you didn't claim all your income or extra expenses, and that's a penalty. All you got to know about tax evasion is that's jail time. I did have one client, a pedodontist in Georgia, who did do jail time. They were quite lenient with him, though. They let him out of jail at 8 o'clock to go work in a clinic, and he had to show back up at 5 o'clock, which he faithfully did. But a broker can show you where you can go without crossing the line, where everybody has gone before, where your tax attorney will say, yeah, that works. Another downside of trying to sell the practice myself is the seller might have unrealistic expectations. In what? Well, in everything. The value of the practice, how long it takes, terms, conditions, conventions of practice sales. So I think I've been doing this for 41 and a half years. I'm just going to pose a rhetorical question to you. Whenever I've appraised a practice for a seller, how many times in 41 years do you think a seller told me, Earl, you've appraised it for too much? Just figure. The other thing we can help with as a broker that could get somebody in trouble, we have language that we've learned through the school of hard knocks, and I mean hard knocks, how to insert to protect the seller. We had one case in which a buyer bought a practice in North Carolina, a lady dentist, really sweet. But her husband had a habit of showing up at the seller's house at 9 o'clock and pulling his coat lapel back to show his sidearm that he carried, and then proceeded to complain about they didn't get a good enough deal. Even I got a complaint filed with me from this husband. We had to have insurance, of course, and our insurance agent got a hold of a lawyer who wrote back to the plaintiff's attorney saying, if this isn't removed in 1 hour, your countersuit will be served tomorrow, and showed him the language in the contract. And I'll share that with you. This is a freebie. You might want to write this down because this could save your bacon. It says, seller does not warrant, guarantee, or even suggest that a single patient would be retained by the buyer, and that no guarantee of any income is expressed or implied in this transaction. Just that one sentence was enough to send the other lawyer packing. He was apologizing on the way out, but you need protection when you're selling a practice. You're just a big target. You just got a lot of money. And guess who people like to sue? People with a lot of money. So it pays to be very careful, very well protected, and you might not know how to put all those protections in. That's a huge downside, in my opinion. Lastly, and it isn't last, I just couldn't think of any others and there wasn't time or room. So I'm going to say nextly, I could lose some excellent prospects because that seller is not really the great salesman that he thought he was. A lot of times we think a good salesman keeps calling and following up. And let me get back to you. And I was just checking. But the people who sell things like your practice for a living, they understand it a little better. If somebody says, Earl, this isn't the right one for me, they won't hear from me again. I don't need to follow up, call back, check in, or anything else. They are not going to buy your practice. I need to find somebody who will buy your practice. And there are some excellent prospects who we can thoroughly alienate who could have been your best buyer if we didn't know how to handle things. First of all, yes, they all know the hunting and fishing is great where you live. They all know that if they buy the practice, you could triple it in 1 year. Just doing outpatient orthodontic surgery right there would add $1 million. And they're going to try to convince this, and these are their words, not mine. It's always a young boy. It's not a young girl, not a young lady, not a young man. Earl, get that young boy down here and he'll just get rich. Well, guess what? That's not the best pep talk in the world for a buyer. That kind of is a turnoff, truth be known. So we know that those of us in the business who are successful at what we do, we're not here to sell something to a buyer. We're here to help somebody who wants a practice to buy one. Huge difference, because people don't like being sold to, but they do like help in doing something they want to do. So this is a huge area of how a seller trying to sell his practice could shoot himself in the foot. Another big downside is using my family attorney. He's been with us, Earl, forever, and with my daddy before that, and his daddy. And he is going to be the one to take care of this for us. Well, we did have one client in Louisiana who said that, but he did agree to also in tandem use the dental transition specialist attorney we referred to him. After 2 months of paying great big bills to his family attorney, who the seller quickly saw was just getting in the way and obfuscating the process, he fired the family attorney. But wouldn't it have been easier to save a lot of money and what could have been a deal-killing experience by trusting people who know what they're doing? But, you know, many of us, we trust our own instincts most. One of my associates, Dr. Jim Howard, had a colleague in California. And the colleague says, Jim, I'm selling my practice myself. Do you know a good attorney who knows how to do this? And Jim gave him the name of an excellent transition attorney. But that being the case, his friend, of course, did not take that suggestion. He ended up paying $40,000 in legal fees for work that should have been no more than $4,000 at that time. Also, when you are sending your family attorney to school on your dime, realize it's going to take a lot of time to educate your attorney because he doesn't know. And then you'll learn another old saying of brokers, time kills all deals. We've seen it happen. We've seen it happen. I recently worked with a buyer and seller in Louisiana, neither of which used a specialist attorney or accountant. So the buyer would call up and say, Earl, explain this to me so I can explain it to my attorney. I said, shouldn't your attorney be explaining things to you? Yeah, but I have to explain it to him because he's never done one of these. Duh. And we might end up with a structure, which I've seen attorneys not understand why things are structured as they are. That could cost a seller a lot of taxes. Oh, here's a big one. And I still hear this today, which kind of shocks me, but it is a mindset of some of the older sellers out there. They said, Earl, bring me a young boy and I can finance this for him. Well, first of all, doctor, a young boy just out of school has a much greater need for income than you do. Your house is paid for, your car is paid for, your retirement's funded, your kids are through college, your wife has her jewelry. He doesn't have any of that, and he cannot make it on the money from your practice, even if you were to finance it. So several years ago, I worked with two buyers. They were both 1.5 years out of dental school. And in one case, a seller said, I can finance the building and practice for you. And I said to the seller, why do you want to finance the practice and building if you could get paid cash? Oh, he can't get paid cash. Well, guess what? In both of those cases, the buyers who were 1.5 years out of school paid cash for their practice and their building. So somebody might have signed on for a 10-year note to get paid for a practice. And if things went real well, they would live for 10 years. And if things went real well, the payments would continue coming in for 10 years. Here's one I just love. Earl, tell the young boy, my banker, he knows me and my practice. He would love to finance the practice for a buyer. Doctor, that is not true. Your banker loves you because he's been making money off of you for years. But he is not about to take a risk on a risky loan. Remember, when we borrow money for a practice, 80% of that loan is based on an intangible asset, your goodwill. And a banker can't get that in the vault, just doesn't go. And then try explaining your tax return and your financials to a prospect. See how quickly you get tongue-tied. Tongue-tied, tongue-tied, tongue-tied. You know what I mean. It's not easy to do something you can't do. And explaining financials is one. Oh, here's a big mistake I've seen a couple people make. You get a very flattering offer from a DSO. They're going to pay you 100% of a year's gross for your practice. So I don't need a broker or consultant to figure that out. Take the deal. Uh-oh. We have found out that those deals can end up netting you many thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars less than a conventional sale structured in the right way. Why? Because you'll probably be required to work for the DSO for a period of 2 to 5 years at a very low commission. And if you just looked at what you're making as a percentage of your personal production, you'll see that you're only making a third as much working for them as yourself. And that didn't offset the price. The price was something you ended up paying anyway. Also, if you don't look at the skeletons in your closet, find out what the weaknesses of your practice are and correct them. For instance, accounts receivable. You have a huge balance. Why? Because you haven't written off any accounts receivable in 36 years. And your over 90 days is $500,000. It's not only over 90 days, it's probably over 90 months. So smart thing to do is write off the uncollectibles that you're not going to ever collect. And whenever a buyer and seller talk together, I see at least $10,000 concession given away by the seller, which was needless just because they're nice, soft-hearted people. Another problem with selling it yourself is it's really hard to protect your confidentiality. And if you're like most of us, you want your patients to find out from you first that you're selling, and your staff find out from you first. And when there's not confidentiality, there can be leaks. The other thing we do is brokers that you'll find is we do a lot of kissing of toads to see who turns into a princess. If we're not there to do it, well, guess who's going to be kissing toads all day? Tire kickers who are very convincing and interested, but can never go anywhere. When you're using a broker, you don't even know those people exist. And the list goes on and on. But who needs a stinking expert anyway? Let's talk about experts. For most people, an expert is just somebody who agrees with them. Now, I know you're thinking, Earl, you are cynical. But here's the proof of that. How many people get a second opinion when they like the first one? Experts are also the people who are called in late in a project to help share the blame. True, true. The most frustrating thing to me, though, is when a client hires me and then proceeds to tell me what to do and how to do it. And then I ask the client, why did you hire me? If you're just going to tell me what to do and how to do it, you could have done it yourself, saved all that money. And I don't feel good about taking your advice because it doesn't work. But I love it when a dentist will hire me and say, Earl, I don't know anything about this business. I'm going to depend on you to look after my best interest. A lot of times people say, Earl, get that guy to offer me $1 million. And that's when I tell him, if I could get him to offer you $1 million, I would weigh 50 pounds less than I do. I can't change other people's behavior. I can barely change my own. But what we do is not try to talk somebody into something they don't want to do. The results will not be good. This will not end well. What we do is just wait for the right person to come along. Earl, why is it taking so long to sell my practice? Well, the right person has not come along yet. And when they do come along, this deal will snap together, friendly, quick, easy, inexpensively. And you need to know that. We don't sell things to people who don't want to buy them. We look for somebody who wants what you have, and we let them buy it and we help them. Now, if you are thinking about selling a practice and you are thinking about hiring an expert, here's a little self-test to give yourself. Am I a controlling type person? Do I need to be in control? Well, you're going to have a very hard time dealing with a broker. because brokers don't want to be controlled by people who don't know what they're doing. And even more so, are you a trusting person? Because if you cannot trust the broker who is handling the sale of perhaps your biggest asset, this will not end out well either. You're both going to be very unhappy. So if you're one of those two type persons, that might answer the question right there. You should probably do it on your own. Now let's go house hunting. Excuse me again. The house on the left and the house on the right are next door neighbors. Which house draws you to it the most? The one on the left for sale by owner? Uh-oh, there's a broker involved here. But you know what? Most people are going to see the advantage of that. I'm going to have dealt with somebody who is required by law to have total open disclosure versus somebody who can tell me whatever they want to say. Somebody whose reputation is on the line for their career, somebody who one and done. Just looking at the house on the right, the preparation that the broker put into it compared to the one on the left makes the house on the right look so much more attractive and desirable. Which one do you think will sell quicker with less hassle? And as I say, well, the same hassle, but the realtor handles all the hassle and for more money. Which one has more legitimacy and provides more confidence? Which owner will have to deal with all the tire kickers and which owner won't even be home when prospects visit? You get the idea. So the upside of selling my practice with a broker, we stage the practice like realtors do a home. We put it in its best but most honest light. We look for any of the problems and skeletons, and we fix them before we show the practice to anybody. We translate your tax returns and income statements into a dialogue that buyers can understand. I do this much work. I make this much money after all expenses. Yeah. We'll work on resolving staff issues, your accounts receivable problems, collections. And we will gather an incredible amount of information buyers and lenders are going to demand. We just sent a package today to a prospective buyer. It was 374 pages. And I know what they think they need. They don't need that stuff. They think they do. But we have it. And when he said he wanted it, it was in his mailbox 3 minutes later because it took 2 minutes to get through the internet. It was 11 megabytes. Oh, and your broker will even remove those garbage cans. We can help provide lawsuits by the language in the documents. We can save you a lot of money in taxes. We preserve your confidentiality. Nobody knows who or where you are until we talk to them and find out they're not a total Yahoo and they sign a confidentiality form. And also, we know the true value of your practice. I maintain a database for ADS of over 3,000 sales. So we know what practices like yours actually sell for at the end of the day. We invest and spend a lot of money on SEO, databases, websites to attract the highest number of buyer prospects so that we find that best buyer for the practice. This is a real important one. When people get a little crazy and they climb up on the ledge and they got 1 foot off, we spend a lot of time as brokers helping them off the ledge and looking at things rationally again. Oh, and look at the time that we save you. I can tell you, I spend a lot of time in the sale of a practice. And if you spent that same amount of time doing dentistry, which you know much better than brokering practices, you're probably going to come out money ahead. And we bring legitimacy to the sale. We do have that reputation, that name to uphold. And our success is really based on your happiness. If you're not happy, my reputation suffers. So, we are in this to bring people together in a way that they both feel happy. What's the biggest thing I think I do for clients? Being there. People call in a panic, and I've answered the phone in Thailand and France and all over the world. And I'll answer their call because I know they need to talk. And it's up to a broker to bring the context into it, the relevance, the clarity, to let them know, hey, yeah, I'm upset too, or no, that's really not a problem. That is very typical for what we're going through. And just talking through things, I think, is one of the most valuable services we have to offer. So in our little story, I told you how I sold that practice in 3 weeks up in Chattanooga. The part I didn't tell you was at the closing, the seller said to me, Earl, I've got more money after paying your commission than I would have had I sold it myself. And I couldn't sell it myself. And I said, well, that just shows the value of what you had. Then the buyer came up to me and he says, Earl, he offered that practice to me last year for less money, and I didn't see where it was worth it. But what you've done is shown me the true value, the low risk, the high opportunity, and I'm very comfortable paying the price that we gave him. Anyway, if paying a big fee is a problem, I tell clients don't use me because I'm going to charge a big fee. That's how I'm able to provide this service. However, if it'll make you feel better, and it should, remember Uncle Sam is going to pay probably 40% of my fee for you because it is deductible. And add to that the time you can practice dentistry and not have knots in your stomach at night because of somebody you dealt with or talked to. Using a broker is pretty good value proposition, I would say. If we didn't do a good job, we wouldn't get referrals from our clients. Because once they see what it does for them, they do try to convince their friends, hey, don't go through that on your own. But if you would like to know, maybe talk to some of your friends who've used brokers and did it on their own, see what they have to say. And I hope in some way that this helps you more than confuses you. I'm a very equivocal person. I could argue both sides of any argument and win. But in this one, I think it's pretty clear because I've staked my career on it. Brokers offer an incredibly valuable, helpful service that just isn't available with people trying to do it on their own. We welcome your calls, questions, and wish you the best of success.
At this time, we'll open up for questions. Please go ahead and feel free to type in the chat box for Earl. The question is, what is your commission rate and how do you value practices?
The commission rate varies. I just offered a client 8% because this is the 4th time that I've dealt with them, and they are very nice people. very easy to get along with. I did have somebody object to my opening bid of 10% commission. He asked if the commission was negotiable, and I told him yes, but why would you want to pay more? He thought that was kind of a smart alecky remark, but I said, well, think about it. If I were that quick to give away my money, guess how quick I'll be to give away your price. So in the range of 8 to 10, depends on things. Any others? Well, you can tell an excellent presentation because nobody could even imagine a question. Oh, you did ask another one. How do we evaluate a practice? Well, the BVAL on the end of my initial stands for Business Valuator, accredited in litigation. I've got about 400 hours of appraisal training from Institute of Business Appraisers. And the BVAL is Business Valuator accredited in litigation, which means I can go to court and testify to the veracity of my appraisal. And there's an article on my website at ADS South, How to Appraise a Practice, that would explain it to you. There are 3 approaches to value: the income approach, the market approach, and the asset approach, and a whole lot of backstory work that goes into it that could be a topic for another whole day. Gary, I'm glad you're going to use a broker. I can recommend a good one for you. Let's see, who else had something? How important is getting a valuation before a listing? I don't know. How important is it to taking an X-ray before placing an implant? Some people think it's a good idea. But let's say I listed your practice and then people called up. How much is this practice? Well, I have no idea. Well, that's a non-starter. No, the valuation is critical, as well as the analysis that goes into that prospect too. And let's see, there's another one down there I'm going to get to. What are your thoughts on selling the practice and keeping the real estate? Well, what I tell my clients is, should I keep the real estate or sell? The best answer to that is from the buyer. Say, would you like to buy the real estate or rent it? If you're flexible and can do either, you've just expanded your audience of buyers and not made a deal that maybe half could live with and half couldn't. But for the smart buyers, I tell them, if you can see yourself in that office in 10 years, buy the practice, buy the real estate. Well, I can't afford the real estate. I said, well, stop and think for a second. If you don't buy the real estate, you're going to pay rent. And guess what? The rent payment is going to be more than your monthly mortgage payment would have been. So you can pay more money and not own it, or pay less money and own it. That's the choice. But a seller who is flexible will get his deal done quicker. Is it possible to get an estimate of the practice value to help determine if it is time to sell or keep owning and working? It is absolutely possible, and I would say it's imperative. Kind of like in ortho, you need to get the radiography to see, is it time to think about banding them up, or no, do we need to wait? It's real important to get an appraisal done anyway. I've had clients who have an appraisal done for no other reason than, Earl, if I don't make it home one day from work, you have everything you need to put the practice on the market in 1 hour. And my wife doesn't have to fuss with, how do I sell a dental practice? Is it possible to get an estimate? Oh, yeah, we did that. Is it helpful to sell practice in real estate on different years due to taxes and income? I don't know. That's a question for your accountant. Once you sell the practice, you're already kind of pushed into the upper tax bracket. Selling the real estate may make a difference, it may not. But remember, time kills all deals. You don't want to postpone things until they can't happen. Do you think there are more hesitant and difficult buyers today than there were 10 years ago? Yes, 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 yes. Oh, did I say yes? Yes. Buyers are becoming more difficult by the second. They need tons of interesting but useless information, which they gather no value from, but they chase sellers around and brokers around to the ends of the earth for things that are interesting and useless. And some of the advisors we see today are just over the top. We recently sold a practice in Georgia. The first buyer, the seller broke off negotiations simply because that buyer's consultant was just too much, not even polite. And guess what? There's enough buyers. We don't need to deal with rude people who don't know what they're doing. What is that process? What is the appraisal fee? If I am going to do a valuation for a client and that's it, here's your valuation, here's your money. I think that's $2,950. And that is not to give you that one metric called price. Price is almost a footnote in this. What we're doing in our analysis and valuation is a cone beam analysis of your practice. I'm going to slice that practice every millimeter, and I'm going to understand this thing down to the molecular level. I'm going to find out where the weaknesses are, where the strengths are, where the sale points are. We want to know what we've got. Now, if you decide to list your practice with me, we discount the valuation to 950 or 1,000, I forget, in that price range. If the practice is an S Corp, can the practice be sold asset sale as the doing business as and hold the real estate in the S Corp? Yes, when you have an asset sale and your S Corp is the holder of the assets, it can sell whatever and what not it wants to sell. So it could sell the practice and the building both, or one or the other. Although from your question, it's a little strange. It's rare when I see the S Corp of the practice holding the building also. It's usually good business to separate those into different entities. Realtors charge 5 to 6. Why would someone pay 8 to 10% for the real estate? That's a good question, and the answer is they don't. With the transactions I do, just to give extra value, we have no fee for the real estate, even when it is transferred by a sale. Other brokers who do handle real estate do have a much discounted rate on the real estate commission. But good question. Did Patrick Healy get a question in? I saw he was raising his hand.
Patrick, if you still have a question, please type it in the chat section on the bottom of your screen.
Well, those were very good questions, much better than I had expected, to be honest. So I think that just shows we have a very high quality audience with us today. And don't feel like this is your last chance to ever ask a question. There's my contact information at the bottom. Always happy to receive questions, have a little chat with people. No fee, just, we can talk. So, Patrick? Oh, I guess Patrick got discouraged. There you go. So if that is it, thank you for your attention, your interest, and tuning in today.